Hey guys, welcome back to Allison Customs, Project Car TV. Today we're looking at this 72 Chevy C10. It's a very nice truck. It's already been painted, driven. It was sold at auction and my customer bought it. With that in mind, after he got it, drove it for a little while, he did some changes to it. He's put a LS engine in it, 4-speed automatic. Different shop did that. What it's here for, because it is a nice truck, starts and runs good, is once the hood is kind of off over this way, we'll pop the hood here and see if we can figure out exactly why. He would like to put disc brakes on the rear. He says the master cylinder is all rusty, which, it's probably a cast iron master cylinder, and I imagine the giant diaphragm, for the brake booster. So we'll look at all that, and then I was just kind of taking a look around. We've got a couple screws missing or maybe just one screw missing in the headlight trim on that side. It is just here to clean up some details. This hood, the door on the passenger side, you have to slam it really hard to get it to close, and then the handle on the inside comes flying off and hits the guy on the other side of the truck. So little details like that. We're not trying to really do a whole lot. Now, he also would like, he says it rides like crap. When I've crawled under it, the first time I saw the truck, I noticed that the front bump stops are maybe 1/4 of an inch off of the little factory tower on the lower control arm. And the rear, the springs look like they're the originals, and there's like no bushings left in them. Final thing we noticed was the back corner on the driver's side of the bed sits lower than the rest of the truck. So it did come in a couple weeks ago. I put it up on the lift, looked it over, and from that we discovered that that corner of the bed wasn't even bolted down and had a shim in it, and you could still put your hand in there. Some weird things going on with the frame, so I sent him back out with the truck with the recommendation to take it to a frame shop and get them to try and straighten the frame. So it's now back from that. So we're gonna go back over it. I'll do a walk around with you, and then we'll make a list of all the stuff we think we need to fix, get his approval, we'll get some parts ordered. There we go, 72 C10. Really like the stance they came up with. It's got a really nice paint job on it. You can see my reflection in the paint there. Bumper delete on the rear. It's been bed lined. Fuel tank has been taken out from behind the seat and put in under the bed with just a fill through. Got nice wheels on it. I think the Riddler, is I don't know if that's the brand or the model. I don't really know these wheels. The interior is very pretty. They kind of missed the color there a little bit between the leather and the dash, but not by much. It's pretty close. And this is the door that starts or closes fairly hard. You got to put a little effort in it. From the outside, not that big a deal. You'd correct that pretty easy, but from the inside, that's pretty hard to get closed up. That's it. All right, let's pop the hood. All right, here we go once again. Pretty nice job under the hood here. I do see what he's talking about. It's just got the old cast iron. This has obviously been reworked, but cast iron master cylinder. Kind of all looks a little trashy right here. And I see what he's saying. Cold air intake. Then you see it's got a aftermarket air conditioning system. They just filled the panels, and I believe he added the air conditioning as well as the LS. But then you can see the other issue he has is just the brake booster is all but hitting the engine back there. So you'd like to correct that. So we'll measure that one up, see if we can't find maybe a dual diaphragm, smaller diameter. But overall, they've done a pretty nice job with everything. Just a few details that he's just not happy with. This area here, and then, like I said, the ride is point where he's added air shocks on the back to lift it up a little bit to make it ride a little better. But I think it's just that the suspension in the back is completely wore out and didn't get replaced. It does have a C-notch under there. Although we've looked at that, we'll finish our walk around and make notes, and then we'll get it on the lift and we'll take a look underneath. All right, so I've got the truck in the air, and before I put it up there, I made a few measurements, took some notes where things were sitting. Interesting enough, the passenger side front sits a 1/2 inch higher than the driver's side front, and that's, you know, I've got my arbitrary mark, but I also have a mark way up there to just the fender lip, something that's kind of a good reference point. This one sits 3/4 of an inch higher on the passenger side than the driver's side, and that's after I took all the air out. Another thing is I measured from here to the tire and then backside to the tire, because this tire looks like it's forward quite a bit in the wheel well. It still looks that way right now. You can see that. And when I let the air out, the passenger side was tucking tire, and this was right at the edge of tucking tire. Or I should say the driver's side was tucking tire, and the passenger side was close. And same thing over here now, but this wheel, when it's on the ground, actually looks centered. So, and it's within a 1/16. I got 4 1/16 in the front and 4 inch on the back. So it's actually very close. So that means something is not quite straight, not where it ought to be. And you can see they've cut the rivets out of the hangers here and bolted them on, which probably means that they've raised it, trying to get a little bit lower stance. It's hard to say for sure. So you can see the bolt up there this is back on the passenger side. You can see, I don't know exactly what they've done in this process, but it's possible that this was even way back here. I just can't be sure without looking at a stock truck. So anyway, maybe some of you already know, it's possible even that, see, these ribs look like that's a great place that fit, but this could be front or back of that, or just slightly lower. It makes sense that it's at least supposed to be lower, because getting to that bolt in there really would not be very easily to get that nut off. So I assume that that front hanger has been moved. The rear hanger does not, you know, it's still got the factory rivets, but you can see the shackle where somebody has just butchered it with different holes drilled in it. I don't know if you can see up in there or not, but there's really almost no bushing in the rear. The front ones are completely shot. See the bushing material coming out the sides on this one, and can't see on the inside there. And then we're back over on the driver's side, and again you can see what little bit of bushing material was in there. It's trying to come out, sleeves coming out. And then this side, you can see they didn't hack, they only drilled one hole over here and still didn't use it, which says that it was too low to begin with. So, you know, there's a lot of good work been done. New brake lines have all been run and stuff, but there's some questionable work in here as well. And I was going to show you the rear bed corner. Whoever did the frame straightening, they went ahead and put a nut on there, but you can see there's a bunch of washers and stuff above that. And this corner of the bed is still very low. This one, they've put a bunch of washers in there as well, and to get it squared up, but just gonna have to work on that a little bit. You can see the frame flexes so much that this comes down and gets real close to getting into the corner of the cab. This side is not nearly as close, but still not ideal. So for now, I'm gonna lower this back down a little bit, put some jack stands under the rear of the bed and the front of the truck, and we'll get some tires off and start getting some measurements for some parts to get ordered. My list so far is about a page and a half long, and it's, you know, just mostly the stuff that the customer's already requested. But all right, let's get something done on here. Thought I'd show you guys something else I noticed. So if you see that dirt ring right there, and the top couple inches of the shock, basically half its travel, isn't getting used. It's filthy up there, which means the shock body is not ever traveling up that far, or the shaft's not traveling into the body that far. So right now the shock, with the weight, no wheel on it, but the spring fully expanded, the shock is bottomed out, or topped out, if you will, and the bump stop is not even touching the spring head. So the shock is acting like the limiter on the droop of the suspension. And then the reason, basically that tells us the shock isn't long enough to cover full droop. Then, because we're not using the top half of the shock shaft, because this bump stop is hitting up here on this flange, stopping the shock from moving in at that point. So if we just took this bump stop off, that's about 1.25 inches. That would give us a whole lot more travel just by doing that. But one of the things we have to concern ourselves with is we don't want the shock to be the limiter on either end, because it damages the shock over time. Now these look to be fairly inexpensive shocks, but that's something we need to correct. We need to cut this bump stop down, get rid of it, something, make it to where the shock doesn't become the limiter, and the suspension can travel far enough to hit bump stops on both ends. The other thing to notice is on the driver's side, and only on the driver's side, somebody has come in and added this rubber, I don't know what you call them, isolator or whatever, it's in between two of the coils, and its purpose is to keep those coils from collapsing. So for whatever reason, this truck, you know, whoever put that in there, this side that was sitting lower would be my guess. And so that was one of their ways to try and get it to stand up a little taller, but it takes away suspension travel. This side, I don't know if you can see that, but from the wheel lip under here to the ground when it was sitting on the tires was 29 3/8. And the passenger side was 29 5/8. And it doesn't have that spring helper in it. That's what we'll call it, a spring helper. So what that tells me is this side's already 1/4 inch shorter, lower than the passenger side, and that's after they've put this in to limit the spring traveling, spring compressing. So kind of means to me we need a different spring over here. Like I said, they've already supposedly straightened the frame, so we're just going to work with what we have. I'm not going to keep sending somebody back trying to get work done that is or isn't getting done. I don't know what all got done. I did see the bill, and I can see a few places where a little work was done, but not a lot. So for now, though, we're going to go ahead and start taking apart the front suspension, get this spring out of here, get the shocks off. We'll get those measured, and we'll see if we can figure out what springs. We'll have to take both springs out, see if they're even the same length. And then we'll try and figure out if we can find a little bit taller or stouter spring. The rear, we're going to pull the leaf springs off and those air shocks off and try and figure out what we need to do back here to get new leaves in here and why this is bolted in. And I wish I knew what kit was in here, but I haven't found anything that tells me, other than I think when I was searching around on these spindles, I think I saw markings on them. So I'm going to pull this apart. I need to anyway. But I'll pull all this apart, see if we can find what the part number on these rotors is, so we could maybe find some that are slotted, so when we do the rear disc brakes we can do slotted all the way around, just for, you know, mostly for the looks, but also a little bit for performance. So, you know, maybe they're a CPP brand or something like that, where we could find the spindles. We might be able to figure out what lift kit or drop kit this is. If anybody looks at it, recognizes it, please comment below. Okay, so just something I was going to show you. Whenever you take one of these rear covers off in this, you want to leave one bolt in, then start prying. And it's loose, you know, but it's still in there to hold the lid in the way, cover. And then just take a flathead screwdriver or a pry bar or whatever. Just tap that in there in a few places on both sides until that pulls away. Let that drain out, and then you won't get a big gush of fluid running out all over the place. Now these have, it's a GM 10 bolt, so it's got C-clips in there. We'll need to remove those so that we can take out the axles. And I've taken the drums off. I've told you guys this before, but just as a reminder, don't come in here with an air hose and blow this whole thing off. All this fine dust that's in here, and you can see how much of it is in that drum. That just ends up in the air, and then it's in your lungs. So avoid that process, getting cancer or whatever. All you have to do is take your drain pan when you're done draining the axle, bring it over here to the side, and then take some brake clean and just spray that whole thing off, let it run in there and drain out. It'll get nice and clean, and you won't have to breathe any of it. So that's where I'm at right now. We're going to get that done, and then we'll pull these axles. That'll let me pull the brakes off, and then I'll go ahead and do, with this all out of the way, it's a little easier to get to the U-bolts. To get the C-clips out of here, which are up inside here, we first have to take out this cross pin, which requires removing this 1/2-inch bolt. So put the car in neutral or whatever so you can turn the drive shaft so you can get to this. Take this bolt out. It's got threads just through this part, and then it's a long pin that goes through that cross pin. Then you're going to push that out of the way. And you don't have to go all the way with it, but because if you go too far, you may knock the spider gears out. You can put back in, but it's just more work. And then we can push the axle shaft in, and we can take the C-clips off. So once I get this out, I'll show you that. Okay, so here's that bolt coming out. You can see what I was saying. It's got just a few threads and then a long pin that goes into this cross pin. So now we'll get that cross pin pushed out so we can get to the C-clips. All right, now you can see if I just barely push on this, yeah, came right out. I've had some where you have to beat on them sometimes to get them moving, but this one falls right out. We're going to rotate this differential around so you can see. The C-clip we want is right there, and there's another one on this other side. Now the easy way to do this is with a magnet, and what we're going to do is we're going to push the axle shaft in. So I pushed in right here. That pushes it in right in there, and then there's the C-clip. Now you can see why it's called a C-clip. And there's one on the other side as well, so we'll do the same thing again. Come out here, push the axle shaft in. I think I just heard that one fall out. Yeah, it's right there. That's it. Now what we don't want is to knock these other pieces out. And now we can carefully pull the axle shaft out. All right, guys, you saw me put a pry bar in here, and what I'm doing is pulling up the arm that exercises the emergency brakes, parking brake. That puts some slack on the cable, and then you can go up to the first junction, which is a clip. Kind of see that. So you get one of these clips, cable goes in that hole and then slides around to catch, and that's on both sides. So we'll leave that hanging on the truck. And this will come off with the whole brake. All we got to do is take loose the brake line that goes to the wheel cylinder. We could set all this aside, go to the other side. Now these brake lines are all new, so pretty easy getting everything loose. You would think some would come out. Alright, so I've taken the C10 apart, got all the suspension out from under it. Finally figured out what the deal was that with this frame, or I'm pretty sure. But this was a long bed frame. This thing was cut and welded back over in here. And that's why there's a doubler plate behind it. That finally made sense. And then what I finally have discovered is this is the passenger side, but the driver's side frame rail, wherever they cut it for this C-notch, they didn't keep everything level and square when they started, and that's why that driver's side frame rail appears to be down so far. Also, I don't know if I showed you, but that's the shackle with the extra bolts in it, or extra holes that they weren't using, but obviously we're trying to figure out a way to raise the truck back up after they got started. So anyway, you can see down here, there's some, maybe you can see that on the camera. It's an area where they've done some grinding, and then there's another area here where they've done some grinding, and then you can see a weld seam back over there. So I'm not going to call it, I'm not calling anybody out on it. You do what you do, and you do what you can do. But we're going to fix it, and shouldn't even be that big a process, but we do have to take the bed off to get that done. One other thing I found is they had slotted the axle pads on the axle, the leaf spring pads on the axle. And that was their attempt at trying to get the axles centered up underneath the wheel wells. So, well, that's where I'm going to leave you this week, with a finished walk around of the truck, as well as all the details of things that we're kind of seeing underneath the truck and what we're going to try and correct. Some of the corrections are just going to be the fine details, and when we got the truck, that's kind of where I thought we were headed. As we got into it and talked to the owner, we realized it was going to be a little more involved. So we've pulled the front suspension out, pulled the rear suspension out. We're going to be doing a whole new suspension on the truck, as well as then going back and getting those final details. So next video will be putting the truck back together, and you'll get to see it drive off into the distance. Sounds great. It's just a great running truck, and when it leaves the shop, it's going to be a great driving vehicle as well. So stay tuned for that. Again, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all the other YouTube stuff. That it really does help in your commenting and hitting the like button and all of that, and really would love to grow the channel further. Just need your help. So please, if you liked the video, if you want to see other videos like this, let me know. Let me know what you didn't like about the video, or I did some handheld camera stuff. I don't know. To me, it kind of gets a little crazy. So if you didn't like it, let me know. I won't do that again. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you again next time on Allison Customs Project Car TV.